You're watching Medfield TV, Community Shows.
Hi.
Technology.
Yeah, I'm not used to this. So,
He didn't know he was going to be taped today.
no, I got
so-
hijacked.
Yeah, so anyhow, there was some conversation about fall prevention and maybe how you get up from a fall. So Chief said he'd be more than happy to come and talk to folks about that. So here he is, and hope you have some good questions.
All right, good afternoon. How you guys doing? When I heard about the fall prevention class, I was asked to participate, and then by the scheduling snafu that we had, we ended up, the person that was supposed to come and do it ended up not being available, and so I said, oh, I know a little about fall prevention, so here I am. I'm going to pace back and forth, so see if she can keep up with me, but I like to keep moving. One of the things with fall prevention in seniors, it's all part of the Remember When program that the fire service delivers, and the Remember When program talks about like all-encompassing fire safety for seniors. Because believe it or not, there's two different groups that have the higher risk for injuries and dangers of being hurt by fire, and that's younger people, kids in high schools, kindergarten, that age, and seniors. And why is seniors in those two categories? It's because of we forget, and that's why they call it the Remember When program. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about fall issues, some of the things that we can do to prevent falls, and then I'll talk a little bit about some fire safety that we can do to make everybody's life safer. So I've been here since May of last year, and what do you think the number one injury that the fire department has responded to for the last 3 years? It's falls. Second, what do you think the second one is? Nope. For injuries, it's motor vehicle crashes. So there's more people being hurt in the town of Medfield by falls than by people who have been involved in motor vehicle crashes. I ran the data, and we're probably, from January to right now, I think there's about 15 responses for falls. And for the last 2 years prior, it was over 50 times that we went out for falls. And that's somebody actually being injured and needed to be transported. Now, one of the things that the fire department does on a regular basis is that we have somebody who has fallen, they're not injured, but they need to get up. So what are your options if you're fallen and you can't get up? It's like that old TV commercial, I've fallen and I can't get up. But what do you do if you're the person that's on the floor? You can roll onto your knees and try to get up that way. One person had suggested going to a staircase and try to use the railing to pull yourself up. Well, if you don't have one of those emergency alert bracelets, but you have access to the phone, you could dial 911, and then the fire department will come to your house, and we will help you get up. We'll make sure you're not injured, and then we go on our way. If we think that you're injured, we're going to make you fill out a patient care report that says we think you need to go to the hospital, or we think you have an injury, but if you don't want to go, we can't make you go. I'm sure everybody understands that. So has anybody here utilized the services of the fire department? We got one. Anybody else? Okay, another one. All right, so the same thing happened. You fell, you couldn't get up?
No, I blew out my knees. I was sitting at my computer and I went to get up and I couldn't get up.
Okay.
And the EMT guy said, literally, take me to the hospital.
Yeah. So that happens. Sometimes you have weakness and you just can't physically get up, and that's usually the number one issue that we have is when somebody's on the floor, they just don't have the strength to get up off to the floor. And one of the first things that they talk about, I have my little cheat sheet here because I'm getting older and I can't remember sometimes, so I have to have my little cheat sheet, and that's one of the first things is exercising. Is if you got to go on a walk, you got to get up and move. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you just sit and you're idle all the time, then your muscles are going to have atrophy and you're not going to be able to have the strength to move. So the first thing that I would ask of you is, hey, talk to your doctor and what's the best exercise for you? Is if you can go for a walk, if you can go and just move and do something. I know here at the Council on Aging, we have all kinds of different classes that they offer. Like, I don't see myself doing Zumba or something like that, but there are some things out here that are great for the seniors, and this is a wonderful place to come. Roberta does a great job making sure that you guys have a lot of activities. So that would be the first thing, is getting some kind of exercise. The second is it's actually kind of simple. We're in a world where everybody's rushing. It's just taking your time. Sometimes you catch your foot on the rugs, you know, you're moving too fast, and all of a sudden you catch your feet, next thing you know, you're on the floor. You know, and just from a standing position, you can really injure yourself. I've had a couple of people that have fallen forward and hit their head onto a concrete surface, and they didn't survive because of that type of fall, depending on what they hit. So it's rather important that you really take care of yourself and that you're exercising some safety at your age. Keeping stairs and walk areas clear. I've been into a lot of houses where there's been a lot of clutter. Sometimes people don't like to throw things away and they keep everything, and the clutter has caused issues where somebody has caught their foot and tripped. So that's a huge, huge issue, is clutter in the house. Lighting. Sometimes the lighting isn't too well and you really can't see where you're going. I know one thing, I almost tripped over my dog. How many people have pets? It's that all the time that the pets get under your feet and they're trying to, you know, fight for a snack, or maybe they have to do something, and the next thing you know, you're stumbling. So that's another big issue, is, you know, if you're going to get up and you're going to move, make sure the aisle and the area is clear. How about non-slip mats? Who has a non-slip mat? Yeah.
What do you mean by non-slip?
Well, a non-slip. You know, in some houses we have the nice floors like we have in here, but if you don't have a rubber backing on the rugs, then the rugs have a tendency to want to slide across the floor. So you could actually run on top of them and you could slide a couple of feet pretty easily. You want to make sure that if you have scatter rugs, or if you have oriental rugs that have a tendency to slide, that you have that non-slip surface that goes underneath them, because if you happen to hit it the wrong way, it could slip out from underneath you and you could crash to the floor. So that's rather important. Anytime that we buy a rug at my house, it has to have a non-slip floor, because I have a little tiny dog that weighs about 50 pounds, but he can run about 100 miles an hour. So he'll go running across the floor and he'll jump onto one of these mats and he'll slide, and I think it's part of his little game that he runs laps through the house. But it's pretty important. I've slipped a couple of times by not having that rubber surface. And you know, you can buy these beautiful rugs and scatter rugs, but if you hit them and they start moving on you, that's not good, because you could break a knee, you could fall, you could break a hip, arm. You know, when you go to fall, and first thing you want to do is you want to put your hands out to stop the fall. Well, you could break your wrist, you could dislocate an elbow, you could dislocate your shoulder. So it's important that you try to prevent that issue from happening. Stairways, talked about being well lit. And then another thing is shoes. What are we wearing for sneakers? Shoes. Do you have a surface that they can slip? I know that sometimes, even with the boots I'm wearing, in the apparatus bay at the station, when the floor gets wet, it's a little more slippery than it normally would be. So it's pretty important that you want to make sure you eliminate all of these opportunities for falls. Now, if any of the stuff that I've talked about, stuff that's within your house right now, the rugs that don't have the rubber backing?
I might have one of those.
One or two? Yeah.
Well, I don't know, there's rubber backing, I just think the rubber backing might be old.
Yep.
There's also the sheet that you put underneath the rug, of rubbery stuff.
Yep.
So, yeah, I found that.
Yeah. In bathrooms especially, you know, the floor gets wet. You definitely need to have them, or even in the bathtub. Sometimes they make those rubber surfaces that you can lay if you have a shower. I know sometimes when it gets very soapy, you can have a more higher chance of slipping. So we've had a couple of people who have fallen. What were the reasons for the falls? Just weakness?
Lack of attention, I think.
Lack of attention.
We have the half steps that we put in a few months ago into the garage, and I just went down, and maybe I wasn't concentrated. I just all of a sudden felt myself going forward.
Yep. And you fell into the stairway.
Well, I say it's 4 half steps, and I was probably on the second step, so I just fell down and onto a rug in the garage and luckily I hit my shoulder, not my head.
Yep, yeah, definitely. If you fall and you hit your head, we would want to take you to the hospital to get you checked. Because even though that you don't think that you have injuries, sometimes you can have a clot or you could have a concussion, and it's better for us to go and get you checked. Now, you know, we've been asked, well, I'll be fine, I'm just going to wait till the morning. Well, unfortunately, we don't have x-ray vision. We can't see inside to say, yep, you're going to be okay. But as EMS providers, our preferred method would be to transport you to the hospital and just get you checked, as inconvenient as it would be. Now, yours was a knee injury. For yours, just weakness.
I tore my meniscus, but I wasn't aware how bad it was.
Yep.
And I went to water aerobics, and I came home and sat down in front of my computer, and all of a sudden I tried to get up, and I was in such pain I couldn't move, so I called 911.
Tore your meniscus. I've had 6 meniscus repairs,
Yeah.
so 3 on each leg. So I'm well-versed in the meniscus repair area. So what about sneakers? What do you think about some of the stuff that we've talked about? As far as, do you think there's any validity to it? Do you think that some of the things that happens within your house, if you go back and you look at your house, am I free of falls? What would you say?
Took up all of our little rugs.
Yeah.
My husband was falling, so I had to make him practically barefoot.
Yeah. Now, what is there? Does he ever slip on the bare floors?
He sees now, but I just have one big rug in the living room, but no rugs anywhere else.
Yeah, and you don't have any issues around your house, right?
Anyone?
And you don't have any slipping issues in your house?
No, I really don't.
Okay.
And I wear good things and shoes.
All right, now I'm looking at the bottom of your sneakers. And you pretty much have lost all your tread on the bottom of your sneakers. And that's one of the things when I'm talking about when I talked about shoe safety and upgrading your footwear. It's if you look at the bottom of our shoes, that all the tread's basically been worn away.
They're very good.
But you're losing your tread. So that's what grips the floor. So once the bottom of the sneakers have worn away, it really gets to the point where you have to start to replace them. Yeah, exactly. You know, if we made those sneakers too well, what would our kids build, you know? Really. It's a good pair of sneakers will probably last you about 6 months. And that's really what we should be changing, is every 6 months, and making sure we have some good footwear, you know? Like shoes like this, where they have a flat bottoms, he's still got a little bit of life left in them, but it's getting pretty thin, you know?
If I almost stick too much and I go the other way.
Oh, you get caught, huh?
Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
slide.
Now, we talked about some stuff with inside the house. What would be some of the areas that you would slip outside? Ice. Ice is a big one. Making sure that we clean around the house, we get the snow removed, we throw ice melt down. Ice melt's huge. We've gone to a couple of calls where we've had some people in the driveway down. Luckily, some bypassers had saw them, and then a couple other ones had the alert buttons where they hit the alert buttons, and we were able to come. One was right across the street from the fire department just the other day, after we had all that snow. So, you know, it's a big thing for us because we see a lot of seniors, and a lot of things of the injuries that we've responded to could be prevented. If, we take our time, we make sure we have good rugs, we make sure we have good footwear. It's rather important. You guys want to be around for a long time. You don't want to have an injury that could be preventable, and that's what it really is. Do you guys have any questions about fall safety or fall prevention?
I live in a condo and we had dark brown rugs on
Yep.
the stairway and on the floor. And we had a couple people fall
Yeah,
because the bottom step blends in with the floor.
blends in with the top step.
I had to put in a light that lights up the bottom step so you can see.
Yep, which is one of the things that we just talked about was well-lit areas.
One in your building? Well, you better call it.
She doesn't have what?
The light at the bottom of the step.
Yeah, the stairway should be very well lit, so you can see the tread and the riser, so you don't catch your toes.
It's a sensor. As soon as you hit the top of the step, it goes on and you can see the bottom step.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but sometimes they don't have the seasons straight, and the sensor is off when it should be on and
Yep.
when it should be on. So that's what happens.
Oh, you have one, but it looks,
Yeah, the sensor is working opposite.
That's something that you could work with your building management to see if they can try to improve. Where do you live?
At Medfield Gardens,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we go out there, we'll take a look at it.
You know what I found? I'm still in my own condo, and everything seems to be fine. I have wall-to-wall carpeting, so I don't have these rugs, these shag rugs and small rugs and so on. But I do when I visit my daughter's house, where there's all the hardwood floors. And if you're not used to them, and if you're not walking around in sneakers, they're so highly polished that you can go through.
Exactly. And that's the whole point of having the fall prevention program, especially if you're in an environment where you have a little different conditions than what you have at your own house. The thing that I've always got caught on was the edge of rugs where if the, yep, yeah, you usually catch your toe or catch your foot, and next thing you know, you're either going forward. Typically for me, I'm going forward, but I've twisted a couple of knees, and you know, I've almost gone down a couple of times. And the last thing you want to do is trip over the, you know, like I said, trip over the dog. Do you have a question?
No, but I have a comment about the ice. We bought a pair of those things that have grippers on the bottom.
Yep.
We put those on, they're fabulous.
Yeah, they have an anti-slip footwear that you can put right over your existing shoes, and it's got a couple of spikes on it that will dig into the ice to at least, you know, reduce the amount of slippage that you would have. You know, I wouldn't go wearing them inside, huh?
Can't you fall with them? I have them, and I found that they were great if I was on ice or even in snow, but as soon as I went off it, I could trip because it would catch on something else.
Correct.
So it was hard because, you know, you don't get one terrain. Usually
Yeah.
if you're heading someplace, you get more than one. So it was like, which one
Yeah.
do I do?
Yeah, it comes down with, you know, once you go and you change the footwear that you have, and then you add something on the bottom of your feet, you have to be cognizant of the different terrains, and, you know, once you're off that slippery surface, it might be worth your while to slip them off and then continue on, and then once you get back on the ice. You know, really the best method is to clean the snow and ice right down to the bare surface, put the salt down and use copious amounts of salt, and that might be the best thing to do. You know?
We can talk about backs.
Yeah, then you get back injuries, and you get people with, you know, experiencing chest pains from cleaning the ice, and it's like it's a revolving wheel of problems. You know. Anybody else have any questions?
Me again. Some hotels or motels don't have rubber mats in their tubs.
Yep.
And if you're used to a rubber mat, of course, you're very comfortable in your tub. But if you get in the tub, that you could just go flying.
Yeah. I would think that you should be able to ask that hotel or that facility to see if they have a non-slip surface.
I've done that.
Yeah. And they provided it, correct?
They'll
Yeah.
They'll bring a mat up.
Yeah.
They have them, but they don't bother putting them in. I don't know why they don't, because it seems to me there'd be a lot of suits.
You would think so. You'd think that they'd be installed in every...
Yeah,
And they
I've
don't
Everyone.
have shower bars to hang on to climb in and out.
Yeah.
These glass enclosures. I've been traveling and freaking out, you know, how am I gonna get out of this tub, because they're high up and they're all
Yep.
glass. But you can put a towel down too, you have to be careful, see if they don't have them.
And the other thing you can do is that if if you're worried about falling, you can ask for a handicap accessible. You know, that my mother-in-law, before she went into the nursing home, that she would always ask for a handicap accessible. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Every time that she'd come down, when I lived down on the Cape, she'd come and visit, we would get her handicap accessible. She couldn't get around without her little walker that she had. You know, and she had to use it, you know, she'd go 20, 30 feet and then she'd have to take a break. So, you know, one of the toughest things for my father-in-law, who's 86, you know, he's a Portuguese truck driver. He took him a long time before he accepted that he needed to use the walker. And what come down to it was a couple of times where he came over to my house. I had to catch him because he was starting to lean to one side. And eventually, his pride just had to bite the bullet and just go for it, because the amount of injuries that he would have by not doing it was going to far exceed any pride that he had that he didn't need it. So, you know, he'll still leave it in the corner when he's at his house. But where's the highest incident of having an injury is probably right in your own home, you know? And that's the thing that we're trying to prevent. We want to make sure you have non-slip surfaces, you have well-lit area, things aren't cluttered. I've gone into some houses to pick people up off the floor, in that they've had so much clutter, they've had like little aisles that we could walk down, because they've saved every newspaper that's ever been printed in their lifetime, and they've saved every magazine and Newsweek and People, and there's stacks up where if we did have to move that person out of their house, we wouldn't even be able to get the stair chair or the stretcher down the hallway to get them out of the house. So it gives us some unique challenges when you go to these people's houses. You know, and if you look at your own home, you know, what I may come in and say, wow, you have a lot of clutter, and you may say, no, I have 80 years of my life. You know, and it's a difference, it's a perspective, because I always look at safety of someone. It's like I go out to dinner with my wife and I make her crazy, because I'll go down and I'll sit down at this restaurant and we'll be sitting and she just wants to have a good meal. And I'm looking like, okay, well, we're over by the fire, you know, the fire exit and the emergency lights. And then I'll walk by the emergency light and I'll hit the button and she's like, don't touch things, this is, you don't work here. And so I kind of make her crazy. But the thing is, we have to think of it in this day and age with all the stuff that's going on with, you know, shooting incidents and fire safety, and, you know, being cognizant of your environment that you're in is really what it's all about, is looking at how can I be safer? Really, that's what it's all about. And, you know, for you guys, if you have a higher chance of falling, then you have to look at, okay, what are the causes of falling? And we have to say, how many of these things can we eliminate? You know? A couple other things for the Remember When program, since I have your undivided attention, is fire safety. I've been to a couple of fires where a senior had one of those nightgowns that had the big sleeves. How many people, I don't have one, but how many people have the big sleeves? Cooking on the stove. You have a gas stove, you turn the stove on, you reach across the stove, and where's your sleeve? And unfortunately, this one lady caught her sleeve on fire from the gas stove. She did, you know, it melted onto her arm, caused some burns. So it's things like that. If you're working with the stove, be cognizant of what you're wearing, because whatever you're wearing could catch fire. If you're going to cook, don't leave the kitchen. We had one the other night. Just last night, somebody was cooking. Apparently they lost track of time, went in the other room, and filled the hallway up with some smoke, all from the stove. So and that's why they call it the Remember When program. It's looking at, hey, do you remember when this was fire safety? This is how we used to do things. You know, as we get older, we forget, unfortunately, and I'm experiencing that myself. That's why I have my notes. So, but any questions on fire safety or fall prevention?
Well, when you start falling, you're saying when you start falling, you put your hands out. If you don't
Well,
put your hands out, you hit your head, so.
Yeah.
What do you do if you're starting to fall?
You know, it's if you're trying to fall, you know, try to land on your butt if you can, which is the.
If you're going forward, that's what I want.
If you're going forward, it's kind of tough. Try to turn to get onto your side. It's so difficult. You know, try to grab onto something. I've seen so many different injuries from different things where people have grabbed on. You know, I say, okay, grab onto something. Next thing you know, the lamp lands on top of you. It's rather difficult. You want to try to land, you know, kind of almost try to lay down if you can.
Lean on your side. and
Yeah,
shoulder
if
your
you can.
head, Your butt.
Yeah, if you can, just put your hands down and try to. You don't want to go stiff. You're more likely to have another injury. Yeah.
Roll into it.
Yeah, if you can. Yeah. So I wasn't really prepared for that part of it. Usually I'm on the other end, where we get you after you've fallen. You know, and then, like I said, this whole program that the fire department usually delivers is the other side of it, where eliminating the hazard before it actually happens. You know. Yeah.
I have a friend who necklace got caught in the top banister as she's going down, and she went straight down into the drywall and broke her wrist because her hands.
Yeah, because she put them out to try to stop her. Yeah. Yeah, that's a terrible type of injury. And there's so many different things that can happen when you fall. It's what's around you that you could drag down with you. It's kind of tough, you know. A lot of times you get people who slip out of bed and slide onto the floor. The people that fall in the bathroom are usually the most challenging for me. A lot of times people will slip up because they don't have that rug in the bathroom, and now the door that opens into the bathroom, and now they're on the other side of the door, and that's And then that's the challenging part, where somebody's on the floor. Now I have to figure out as a responder, all right, how am I going to make access into that bathroom to get that person out with the door that's blocking my entry?
What do you do?
Well, sometimes we'll disassemble the door. We'll try to get it open enough so somebody smaller than me can sneak through. And then once you get on the other side, you at least try to position them so they're maintaining a C-spine, so that if they have a head injury or a neck injury, we're not making it worse, but getting them out so we can, get inside, and then we'll take the door off if we have to. The last thing that we'd ever do would be bust the door open. We'd try to not do that first, because you don't know what's on the other side. Yeah.
So I've heard over the years, many people say they've fallen and they're embarrassed that they've fallen, but most people take a fall once in their life at least.
Absolutely.
But it's really important for them to know if they can get to a phone to call 911 and
Yeah.
not try to get a hold of the son or the daughter or a neighbor who might not be home. Just call you guys to come and.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said that earlier on. That's a service that we provide. We are at the fire station, and we are here to provide services to the people of Medfield. So
How do
if
you get in the house if the doors are locked?
we can get in. Well, you got to remember, we have some tools where we can force the door. Obviously, the last thing that we want to do is damage the house. We could, we have a tool that we can put into the door jamb to push the lock over to pop the door. And the absolute last thing we want to do is break something, because obviously that's going to, if you're on the other side of the door and you have no injuries, other than you need to be picked up off the floor, the last thing you need is two guys coming in and breaking up the entry to your house to get inside. So if you are experiencing a lot of falls, okay, and it's happened kind of frequently, or if you're afraid, how is the fire department going to get into my house? We have a thing called the Knox box. So what it is you can go and for about $170, I think it might be the cost. It's a little key box that is put on the outside of the house. Only the fire department has access to it, and it's a key to your property. So you buy it, it stays on your house, it's only for the fire department in Medfield to get access to. So if you think you're going to fall, or you're experiencing medical issues that might impede your ability to get to the door to let us in, then you can have this Knox box. And that's basically, it's a key box that only we can get into. Now, there are some key boxes that the police also have access to. It's like a police fire joint key, or you can get the one just for the ambulance, which would be us. And that would eliminate us having to force the door, break a window, crawl through a window. It's pretty funny watching me crawl through a window, by the way. I just have to add that. I don't normally fit through some windows. But.
So I did have information on those boxes back some time ago, but maybe I could get that information.
Yeah, as of January, they changed the application process. You can only order online. So what happens is you go to the website, you plug in your address, Medfield Fire, and then what they'll do is once you make your payment, they send me an email that says someone has applied for a Knox box, and then I approve it, and then it gets sent to your property. And what it does, it just hooks on the top of the door. So it's made to.
You don't have to manually install it?
You don't have to mount it into the house at all. You just clip it on the top of the door.
Oh, handy.
But if you have a screen door and you lock your screen door, then I might have to break the screen door if it's on the other side of that. So you just make sure the screen door is open. Yeah?
Well, we live in Prentice Place. Our primary access appears to be the garage door.
Okay?
Should we leave our code number with the fire department or police department? Does that work? Or?
No, I'd prefer you didn't.
Okay.
Because if you think of everybody, how many numbers I'd be tracking,
Yeah.
it would be a little more difficult. And some of these apartment buildings and housing units have fire alarm systems, and they have a Knox box for the property already. I'd have to take a look at your situation to see what you have.
Because it's one of these places, the garage door functions as the front door.
Yep. Yeah, I'd have to look at that one. Any other questions?
Do you have any suggestions that my children, now that I just turned 87, and now they think I'm ready for a life alert button?
Yep.
Or whatever they call them. And now they're having trouble trying to decide on what brand to get. Do you have any suggestions?
I don't have any favorite. We talked about that a little bit right before I came into the room. I don't really have a lot of experience with those. I know the ones that exist, and you know, sometimes that we have the ones that are a watch based that will locate you no matter where you are. Some of the pendants, which are when you're in the house. It comes down to what you can afford. You know, one of the things we talked about is just a regular cell phone. The way cell phones triangulate your position now, or just having a cell phone on you, you can just pick up the phone and dial 911.
When you're in the shower, that's kind of hard to do.
Understood.
And they have a button that goes on the wall in the shower.
Yep.
There's one of them that has 3 different access buttons. There's one for the lock, like you said.
Yep.
The one that goes around your neck, one for your wrist, and one in the shower.
Yeah.
I don't know what brand that is.
I know a couple of places that I've worked. It had the pull chains in the bathroom, and I've been to so many cats that have grabbed the hold of that and yanked it. And
Cats?
cats, you're playing with a string on the wall.
Oh,
Yeah.
run out of the house,
Yeah.
there's cats in there.
Yeah. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, as far as what manufacturer, you know, it comes down to what you can afford, what's your situation, and what are you looking for? Are you looking for 20?
And I don't want them.
Oh, you don't want them. There you go. Have you fallen?
I fell once,
Okay.
and it was such a ridiculous, I went to reach across my table in the kitchen, and I was half asleep, the phone had rung, and woke me up out of a sound sleep in the recliner, and I ran in to get it. Ordinarily, I would have my cordless phone next to me, but I was charging that in the bedroom. And then I said to myself when I did that, when I put the phone in the bedroom, I said, if the phone rings, don't answer it in the kitchen. But I didn't listen to myself when it rang. I got up and I went to reach across my table, which is probably 3 feet wide, 4 feet wide, to the wall phone. And as I did, I reached up and the phone gave way and it came back and I went flying on my back, on my rear end.
Yep.
Now I couldn't even feel my legs. And the person on the phone is saying, did you fall? And I'm saying, yes, I did, but hold on, don't. And I thought I knew who it was. But she said, should I call Kelly? Should I call your daughter? Should I call your son? And I'm saying, no, just wait a minute, I think I feel my legs coming back. And they were, and finally I said to her on the phone, I said, who is this? And, you know, so when she told me, she said, she wanted to make sure I was okay. Now, I said, don't go away. I'm going to leave you here until I try to get up from this position. Now, my kitchen chairs are all on rollers.
That's not good.
So I had to roll one across from the left over to the right to where the refrigerator was to stop the chair.
And you pinned it up against the
I pinned it
refrigerator.
up against there, and then I did get on my knees and got up, and I talked to her from there.
Yeah.
From then on, I had to call all my kids because I knew she'd get on the phone with each one of them and tell them your mother fell,
Yeah.
you know,
Once again, rushing and going fast
out of the sleep,
out of a sound sleep.
That's
Yeah.
the thing. But
I don't rush to get the phone. If I don't make it in the time that it stops ringing, then they'll call back.
I ordinarily wouldn't have. I made it my point. I made a point to say to myself, don't answer the phone if it rings.
It's
Hmm?
instinct, though.
But apparently, some part of me didn't
Yeah.
listen to it.
You have to remember that they'll call back if they don't get you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And once again, you know, these are all examples of taking your time, making sure the floor is free from anything that will cause you to trip. You know? Any other questions? What are you making? Oh, okay. Oh, nice. Making some progress over there.
Can you talk a little bit about the paramedics you have on board, the ALS, and how that?
Yep. On November 29th of last year, we went to the ALS level. I was able to hire 5 paramedics, 4 of which are the new hires. I had one person that he left the department, so I had to replace him with a paramedic. So we've been at the ALS level on 1 ambulance since then. On December 22nd-ish is when we were off our probation, I guess you'd call it. where we didn't need to have a preceptor department come in and watch us and baby us. So we've been operating at the ALS level since November, end of November. It's been going very well. We are losing our reliance on mutual aid communities like Westwood, Walpole, Norfolk, Millis. We still need to have them come into town when we have multiple calls. We've had a couple of times about 3 weeks ago where we had 5 medicals all at the same time. Now with our current ambulance situation, we can provide 1 ALS ambulance, 1 advanced life support ambulance, and 1 basic life support ambulance. But after that, once you get 3, 4, and 5 deep, you have to go to the mutual aid companies. So what would happen is that mutual aid company comes in and they just handle the call for us with our assistance, and then they collect the revenue.
What's ALS?
Advanced life support,
Okay.
so it's paramedics. So if you were to have chest pain, difficulty breathing, say if you're a COPD patient, you have diabetic issues, we would be able to treat you and get you to the appropriate facility.
You treat while you're transported?
Correct.
Yeah.
We'll usually stabilize.
Did you get some new vehicles recently?
Well, we haven't gotten anything new for vehicles.
And how long?
Well, we got a new ambulance about 2 years ago, I think.
Okay, because the one I rode it was of a couple years ago. It was awful.
Okay, yeah, we still have that truck. Yeah, it's got 100,000 miles and it's tired.
It's miserable.
Yeah, it's tired. I'm trying to, eventually we'll replace that truck and we'll try to rotate the ambulances on a regular basis. And then what I would do is, every couple of years make make a truck ALS and just kind of rotate them. Typically in an ambulance, you can get about, once you're in the area of 80,000 miles, it's time to replace. And the one ambulance that you're talking about is over 100,000 miles, I believe.
Well, I had torn, as you know, my knees, but every time they brought a bump, I was in
You
screaming
feel
pain.
everything. Now, as an advanced life support ambulance, we would be able to give you some pain management
Yeah,
to take that away.
that's nice.
And that's one of the advantages of ALS. One of the first things that, I had come to Medfield and I had always been involved with advanced life support. When I was hired in Duxbury Fire, I was hired as an EMT and we didn't have paramedics at that time. But when the new chief came in, we moved to the ALS level, so I had been part of the startup in the past. And it's such a difference when you come in, and if you have somebody who's complaining of a certain problem, that you can be able to treat it, or take their pain away, or take your nausea away, because if you have nausea and vomiting or something like that, like we can give you some medication that takes that away. It's so good to be able to do that, but it was frustrating for me coming to Medfield and having someone who had a broken hip, and it's faster for me to drive them to the hospital than it would be for the advanced life support unit to get here, where you have to make that decision. And if we were advanced life support at the time that we responded to the broken hip, we could have taken the pain away, not have to experience all those bumps. And if anybody here has had a broken hip, it's extremely painful and you have to stabilize it, and it's better to have the pain management. But advanced life support's going very well. I have a town article on the capital expenditure to buy another cardiac monitor to try to make the second ambulance advanced life support as well, because I'm a paramedic, and it would be good just to have that second truck as ALS. That way we'd be able to provide the service no matter what. We're a little more challenging at night. We only have 2 paramedics on the heaviest shift. Typically we'll run 3 people on duty, so it'll be a medic, an EMT, and either another EMT or another medic as an officer. So it's kind of a little more confusing for me to explain it, but we have 2 shifts of 2 paramedics and then 2 shifts of a single paramedic. But we have 3 on duty, and the other gentlemen are EMTs, to explain that properly. So.
That must be unusual to have 5 calls all at once.
Where I came from, at Sandwich Fire, that was the norm.
Oh, really?
But we had the resources to handle that volume, because we lived it. Being on the Cape in the summertime, you could have 34 calls in a single day, and the call volume is just 3 times what we had here. Have here. Given the staffing that we have, I think we are able to handle pretty much up to that second medical. Then you have to go to outside resources. And if you think that's the same as some of the surrounding communities, if you only have 2 ambulances, Then, you know, once you're into that second medical, anything above that, you have to rely on your mutual aid partners. So they have to come and help you. And one of the things since we've gone ALS is we've helped some of the other communities. So we've gone to Dover a couple of times. So we went to Dover, we handled their ALS call, and you know, we get that billing. The money that was generated from that call comes back to us.
How about Millis? I live in Millis.
Yep.
How's that work?
Millis went ALS shortly before we did, and they have 2 ambulances, and they're providing paramedic level of service. So, you know, and they do it very well. I know Chief Barrett over there, and you know, he's doing a very good job of making sure that service gets delivered.
When you're helping, when you send your crew to neighboring community,
Yep.
are we alone here?
Well,
Or do you
what-
have backup here?
It depends on what the backup would be, is that we'd put a recall on to call people back. And depending on the type of call, the second call would be, we would call for some mutual aid depending if we needed it or not. That's the system that we live within. Right now we have 2 firefighters on duty. One is a paramedic and one is an advanced EMT. So if they go on a call right now, and the only responder at the station during the day would be me, and then I would put a box alarm on to call people back. That's how the system that we have in Medfield works. If we had 3 people on, then the 2 people would go to the hospital and the 1 person would come back, and then the next call that we get, that person would respond with people off duty. So we'd put another box on, call for people to come back.
So it sounds like we're covered well.
We are. We try to do the best we can. There were some challenges at first, when I first got here, as far as the second ambulance, and it was not in service at the time. And so I'm trying to make the move so we can be as self-sufficient as possible. And so far, you know, last night around 3 o'clock in the morning, we had a single car motor vehicle crash with 3 patients. So what we did is the station responded with 3 people, 2 in the ambulance, 1 in a pickup truck. And then we were updated that there were 3 patients, so we put a box alarm on for the second ambulance, called Westwood for the third ambulance, because we had 3 patients. And then an engine came from the station from the people that came off duty, and then we were able to mitigate the problem.
When you pick up somebody, can they request which hospital they want to go to, or?
Yes, to a certain extent, it all depends on what your injuries are.
Well, I mean, it's either Beth Israel Needham or Wellesley, or where else do you go?
Norwood.
Okay.
Yep. It all depends, you know, it's one of the rules for EMS providers is that depending on your emergency, I can't drive by a hospital to take you to someplace else, depending on what the situation is. And I know some people have a big problem with that, but I'm bound by rules, EMS rules that are governed by the Office of Emergency Medical Service here in Massachusetts.
Meaning what? I don't know what you said.
Well, it means that if you're having a heart attack, cardiac, or if you're having chest pain, and I look at your EKG in the back of the ambulance and I say, yes, you are having a myocardial infarct, you need to go to a cath lab. I can't take you to a hospital that's not a cath lab. So I have to take you to the appropriate. It's like if I come to your house and I believe you're having a stroke, I can't take you to a hospital that's not a stroke center. I have to take you to a stroke center.
Well, all those 3 cover all that, don't they?
Some do, some don't.
Wellesley,
I
Beth Israel?
would have to look in what each one provides, but
Really? I
yeah.
thought they were all covered on that.
yeah, I know that in the area where I came from originally, the hospital, the local hospital was not a stroke center. They have since become a stroke center. It's like a trauma protocol. Where I came from, you had they call it, what was that called? Point of entry protocol. So if you were classified as a trauma, you fell, you hit your head, you're unconscious, I had to get you to a trauma center. I had to either take you to the closest trauma center, which was a level 2 trauma center, which was South Shore Hospital, or I had to get you into Boston. But the way the rules were is I couldn't drive by a trauma center to get you to Boston. So, you know, sometimes we'd fly somebody into Boston because it would be faster than driving to that level 2 trauma center. And a lot of times that the patient's injuries necessitated Boston, and you knew if you took them to the level 2 trauma center, they were going to go there anyway.
About a month ago, they had a helicopter pick up somebody at Kingsbury. Is there a landing there for
Yeah, right out here in the
Yeah,
parking
some of
lot,
them-
there's a landing zone.
So that
Yep.
person, whoever it was, had to go into Boston?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, yep.
You couldn't transport, they had to take them?
It's faster to get them in that way.
Okay.
And you gotta remember, when we look at that, it's, say if it's a motor vehicle crash, and we have to cut somebody out of a car, we look at the time of extrication. How long does it take to remove that person? What's the transportation time? Is the helicopter flying? Because sometimes, it may be sunny here, but where the helicopter is, could be fogged in. So you have to process all this information, and what's the fastest way to get the patient where they need to be? That's what it really comes down to, getting the patient where they need to be.
It seemed to take forever to load that person now.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it does. You have to remember, the helicopter will land, they have a pilot, a nurse, and a paramedic on the helicopter.
All right.
So they will get out of the helicopter while the helicopter's still running, and then they'll jump in the back of the ambulance and they'll make an assessment. They're not going to transport somebody in cardiac arrest. They won't do it. So that ends up being, so if the person's condition deteriorates and now they're in cardiac arrest, well, I have to drive to the closest hospital, which would be Norwood. So there's a lot of different things that we have to live by,
Yeah, it's hard decisions.
Well, and the other part of it is the paramedics within the town of Medfield operate under Dr. Valkanis, who's Norwood Hospital. So we operate under his license. So what happens is all of our paramedics have to go before Dr. Valkanis, and you have to have a test. So they say, okay, he gives you a cardiac rhythms test. So he gives you a test with all these different cardiac rhythms, and you have to tell them what the rhythm is. There's a protocol test. So within the state of Mass, there's the OEMS protocols, which are about, inch and a half thick. And we have to know, okay, if that person's having a stroke or this person's having COPD, how are we going to treat that person, which is giving them the proper medications, giving them the right dosages, and he has to know that we know what we're doing. So it's all part of the system that we have.
I have a question. If you're at home and all of a sudden you have chest pains, is it true you think you're having a heart attack, you should take an aspirin and call before you call 911?
Well, that was a whole debate that I saw on the news today, where they're saying now it's not good to take an aspirin. Typically within the protocol, unless it's changed very recently, if you haven't taken an aspirin, then we have it that will give you baby aspirin.
Because they transported me last week in the ambulance with heart chest pains, and they gave me 4 baby aspirin.
Yep.
Then they did a whole bunch of lab work in there, and they came back and said, oh, this is low. And I said, yeah, because they just gave me 4 baby
Yeah.
aspirin. That's probably what.
That's in the protocol.
Yeah.
Yeah, was it us?
No, I
Oh.
was over in Wellesley.
Okay, yeah, that's within the protocol, depending on your blood pressure, your pain level, the EKG changes you have, where there's a whole algorithm that we have to follow, and it's all based
So now I
on,
don't take it.
well, the news article that just came out was talking about that 1 baby aspirin a day is not good for you, so it's like 1 week you can eat tomatoes, 1 week you can't, 1 beer is no good for you, now they drink 3 beers a day or whatever.
I wanted to ask you about, do you check medication of the patient's medication? And you're going to be giving medication sometimes because
Yep.
you can't have it.
Correct, and that's why we need to have an up-to-date medication list. So it's, well, what we would prefer that if you're at your house, they have those vial of life that you can stick on your refrigerator, or you can just take your medication list and have somebody write it out legible and just stick it on your refrigerator with a magnet that says medication list. So if we were to come to your house and you're unconscious, and we will go and we'll look to see if you have a file of life, but if you had something big that said medication list, because then I can look and see, okay, if you're on a medication that would be contraindicated on something I would give you.
Okay,
Sense?
so it should be on the refrigerator.
Yep,
I just have in my refrigerator, I have a pill thing with a list of all my meds in it. You
Yeah.
said you're supposed to have a special thing on the outside?
no, there's a thing called a file of life, which is it's a magnet on the outside.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm a fire chief. I have a file of life for my mom who lives with me. It's on her
That's
fridge.
good. I didn't know that, I just have
Yeah.
a thing inside the refrigerator, and in it's a piece of paper with all my list of
Yeah.
meds.
You gotta remember, you don't put it someplace where we have to try to
Yeah,
find
you
it.
wouldn't- That makes sense.
Yeah, you want to, you gotta remember, you gotta make it fireman proof, so a big sign on the fridge, no, list of meds.
Anyone need one?
I
A new
do.
file of
I
life?
have one.
One, two? Great.
Yeah, and it's important because we do look for them. We have a great system here where we work very closely with the police, so, we will spawn as joint agencies, And, the PD will help move bags, they'll help get information. Say if you didn't have a medication list, they'll help us get a list of the meds that they can find anyway. You gotta remember, where are your meds kept? Some in the top dresser drawer, some are in the kitchen cabinet, some are in the bathroom cabinets. Wherever we may hide things, because that's where we're used to, in our lives, that's where we put them. But sometimes if you're there and you're not breathing right, and your heart's not beating the proper way, then we can only take so much time to look for this information. At some point, we're gonna scoop you, and time is of the essence. We have to get you to where you need to be.
In the wall.
Well, some people are under the impression that you look at this thing here and you look for all the medications.
Oh,
Do you do that?
what is that? Okay, that's your heart rate,
Well, it's the whole thing.
the vitals. Well,
So you're not familiar with it?
no, well, the other thing is all of a sudden, do I have to hold the phone up to your face so it reads your facial print? And how to get in? Because my phone is locked down with a password.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
No, I think the Vital Life that's on this red, at least for all the time I've been here, Medfield EMTs have always gone in and found that on the refrigerator.
Yeah. That's the standard. That's the easy thing to look for. And if you have something where, if you're allergic to something, you should have that medical bracelet that lists out that you're allergic to something. And that's the thing, is I don't know what you're allergic to until I'm either told, or if we've transported you in the past, and it would be in our system. Because our patient care reporting system is how we do the medical record that we give to the hospital. We take you to the hospital and we have to fill out this form, why we took you, what your medications are, what we did to help you. So it's a complete list of my interaction with you from the point where I walked through your door to the point where I handed you off to the hospital. All has to get recorded.
Would the patient gateway let the hospital let you have
That-
access to that too?
No,
No?
nope. I have no access to the gateway. I have a sole EMS reporting system that's Medfield Fire that I've given access to Dr. Valkanis, the medical control doctor, so he can log in to my system. Now think about this. Huh?
That's Norwood Hospital.
I mean, Norwood Hospital.
Yeah, I knew Wellesley there.
No,
If I
the
said you wanted a patient gateway, they wouldn't let you go in there.
patient gateway is your access, not mine. I have no access to any
Their
gateways.
verbal permission wouldn't work.
No.
Oh, interesting.
It's your personal medical information I don't have access to.
Or something like that.
Well, that's good to
We
know.
think that this
I didn't
is
know
gonna
that.
take place
I thought I
in
just
February.
say, oh, patient gateway. Then you can find everything you need, because it's
No.
all in there.
Nope, mine is, the only information I have in my system is what
Is that
I've
'cause of
collected.
HIPAA laws, which is so strict?
Well, it's because of HIPAA, because I can't see your stuff.
I know.
And it technically, if you have a medical problem and say your daughter, son wants to see my report, I can't give you a copy until I get a written sign off. So that has caused some unique scenarios in the past where I had a gentleman who was 40, but he could not take care of himself. Dad really didn't have power of attorney, and then the son passed on, and he wanted the medical records, but I didn't have anything to produce to say that he could get access to those records. So it caused a unique scenario.
Where do they have it in common setting? Yeah, they could-
The lawyers got involved.
Everybody's worried about getting sued.
It's politically correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got to do what I'm told.
I asked Cynthia,
yeah.
It's kind of to do with this. The carbon monoxide smoke detectors.
Yep.
We all get them. And
Yep.
You're supposed to, how do you know when they're not working? I mean, they beep, 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 and then sometimes you just hit it once and then they work again. But how do you know, they say every 6 months you're supposed to change everything?
Every 6 months, you're supposed to change your batteries. The rule of thumb is change your clocks, change your batteries.
Really?
Yep. And it depends on the type of system you have. So if you have a system that's connected to an alarm company, I would give them a notice, say, hey, look, I'm going to go and test my alarms. But if you have a smoke detector and carbon monoxide detection system that's not connected to an alarm company, you hit the button, if it goes off. Now, sometimes if you hear like it beeps like once every 5 minutes or something like that, you'd have to look at the owner's manual, because each one of the tones that were in those devices actually means something. So if you have like a CO detector that beeps like 3 times, like beep, 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 and goes away for a few minutes, and beep, beep, beep. Usually that could mean the battery's dying, or the device is starting to fail. Smoke detectors have to be replaced every 10 years. So if you've lived in your house for 30 years and never replaced your smoke detectors, it's probably time to change your smoke detectors.
I live in a condo unit that upstairs in the master bedroom, there are high ceilings.
Yep,
And we have smoke detectors up there, but I think they're all wired to each other.
they're probably interconnected.
So how do you take care of that?
Well, usually the alarm company will have it, the system will be monitored and it'll send test signals back and forth. But as far as the state of Massachusetts and smoke detectors, every smoke detector is supposed to be changed every 10 years. Now, a CO detector should be changed every 5 to 7 years, but the other part of this is everything is controlled by the manufacturer's recommendations. But if you read that pamphlet that came with it, it would say, you know, change your smoke detectors, no, you know, every 10 years usually. Did I make you confused?
Well, the one in the master bedroom, I'm a trustee, and there are 7 units, we're in the Woodlands, and they're up there, and I've been there 14 years, and it's not beeping, and it's not, I mean, I think it's still working, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't
So I
get
think
it.
you'd have to ask your management company.
Yeah, I would ask the management.
company.
Well,
You have to.
let me say this.
That is a independent conversation, maybe another time, but.
Yeah. Well, typically, if you were to sell your house, I would come and do an inspection, and if they look like they were over the 10-year period, then I'd have to require you to,
Could we have, I'll talk to you some.
okay.
I have a question.
Yeah,
I live on a two-story house.
yep,
And the upstairs has no access if there's a fire. There's a center, the cave, typical cave.
yep, center stairway.
So how do I get those, what do you call them, those steps that you put outside? You know, somehow you hook it on your windowsill?
The window escape ladder,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
the one that rolls, so you put it on the windowsill and it drops down. I think you can order those off the internet.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
is there a certain one that, you know, because they'll also say.
I haven't seen them, I haven't come across, what's that?
People don't use them.
I haven't seen too many of them. If they're out there, I've only seen, I'm coming up on 20 years pretty soon, and I think I've seen 2 houses that have them.
It always makes me nervous in this house because.
Yeah. You gotta remember, that's a last resort type exit device. So you're climbing on the side of the house and, yeah. Yeah, swing out. So,
But that's what that would be like, right?
any questions for me? I think we're hitting, I've talked probably way too long.
Oh, perfect.
So I hope I've answered your questions. I hope I haven't confused you at all. Say if you have something for me, if you want me to come out, you want us to come out and take a look at your house, we can.
You're watching Medfield TV, community shows.